next laugh outweigh the bad.
And I'll take with me the memory.
Federal investigators are on their way to the crash site. L.A. County Sheriff Alex Villanueva says the area is blocked off.
We now have personnel deployed to get people away from there, and they cannot access the crash site. It is in very rough terrain, very dangerous, even in daylight, much less in the middle of the night. So we just want people to stay away.
L.A. County Chief Medical Examiner Dr. Jonathan Lucas walks through the next steps for his team.
Priority after recovery is identification and notification of the families, all of which we'll do as soon as we possibly can.
All 9 people on board that helicopter died. The president's legal team resumes their defense in his impeachment trial on Monday. House Republican Mark Meadows appearing on Fox's Sunday Morning Futures.
This is all about politics, Maria. It has nothing to do with witnesses or anything else. It's all about a political, really a political allegation trying to impugn the president's reputation.
The New York Times reports that former National Security Advisor John Bolton has written in his new book that President Trump wanted to freeze Ukrainian military aid until the country committed to investigate his Democratic rivals. It is unclear whether Bolton will testify. America is listening to Fox News.
Yikes, are those Christmas bills coming in already? Those high-interest credit cards at 16, 18, even 24%? Well, we have a New Year's solution for you. A Bank Pacific personal loan with rates as low as 4.65% to pay off those expensive credit cards. It's easy, it's fast, and it's as low as 4.65% APR.
Bank Pacific, where others put branches, we place roots.
Equal credit opportunity lender as low as 4.65%. Conditions apply.
Mesco Chamorro Fusion Bistro in the Grand Plaza Hotel Tumon is now serving your favorite daily specials. Come one, come all. Enjoy your Monday with that savory caron pica. Your Tuesday with your one and only candied salmon. Stroll by on Wednesday to try that local style oxtail caro. Or Thursday if you're feeling that pan crisp pork belly served over roasted sweet potato mash. And don't forget that misoyaki black cod with garlic mashed potatoes on Fridays. Busy at work and still want your fix? Call us at 969-2652 for your takeout order.
China is expanding its efforts to contain the coronavirus outbreak. So far, 80 people have died from the infection. The government extended the Lunar New Year holiday to prevent spreading the virus. Hong Kong has also banned mainland Chinese from visiting. Democratic presidential hopefuls are gearing up for the first test of who can win the White House. The Iowa caucuses are just 1 week away. Former Vice President Joe Biden promising to protect workers' rights.
We fought together against the right-to-work laws. If I'm president, I'm going to repeal the provision in the federal law that allows states to impose right to work.
Former Mayor Pete Buttigieg in a Fox town hall on Sunday weighing in on the impeachment trial.
If he's not, it's going to send a message that this Senate, or at least Senate Republicans today, think that it's okay to lie, it's okay to cheat, it's okay to involve a foreign government or pressure a foreign government to get involved in American elections.
And former New York City Mayor Mike Bloomberg is skipping Iowa. He campaigned in Florida over the weekend on why he's the man to take on the president in a general election.
I think I know how to beat Donald Trump, and we're going to show that. I've been traveling all over America, running hard to be the Democratic nominee. That's right. And while the other Democrats attacked each other, I'm focused on making the case against Donald Trump because we've just got to beat him.
A new national Fox News poll finds Biden down 4 points, Sanders up by 3 points, followed by Warren, Pete, and Andrew Yang. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has landed in Washington for meetings at the White House Tuesday. He vows to make history as President Trump unveils his plan to resolve the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. The Palestinians were not consulted on the plan and have already rejected the proposal. Netanyahu's top political opponent, Benny Gantz, is also coming to Washington. I'm Jessica Stone. This is Fox News.
Cocoa Coffee Company is now available at Circle K. Single origin coffee beans carefully sourced and locally roasted to give you the freshest cup of coffee Guam has to offer. Grab a cup that's brewed every 30 minutes or purchase a bag of the locally roasted whole beans. Flavors now serving: light medium roasted Ethiopia and medium dark roasted Jamaican Blue Mountain. Exclusively available at Circle K. With every Cocoa Coffee Company purchase, a portion of the proceeds will go towards the Cocoa Recovery Program.
Here at APL, our core values give the company its heart and soul. Whether it's connecting your business with our global network through our newly enhanced service or investing our efforts into giving back to the community, APL is committed to serving you. We humbly honor the opportunity to find innovative solutions for you and your business. To learn more about our enhanced service, call 588-4651 or visit www.apl.com/Guam for more details.
Talk Tales with Bob Klitzkie is brought to you by Bank Pacific, banking on the Pacific for 65 years.
Welcome to Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie, the only show on talk radio where common sense is a lot more common. Phone lines are now open at 888-TALK. That's 888-8255. And now, The Point proudly brings you Tall Tales with Senator Bob Klitzkie.
It's quite a well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state. The right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. At least that's what our friends in the old American colonies have been saying lately. They refer to it as their Second Amendment. Right, Real Joe Cruz?
Yes, Governor.
So here we are for another exciting, elucidating, educational, interesting episode of Tall Tales. We, as always, start out with the Second Amendment, and as per the caveat that I have issued on another occasion, well, even before I get into the Second Amendment reading, I've got another Joe on the line.
He's hungry, sir.
Oh, well, I hate to keep any kind of a Joe waiting. A real Joe Cruz, another Joe. I think at one time I had regular Joe on the calls once upon a time, didn't I?
You always give the best Joe treatment, sir.
Yeah, okay. Well, this guy here is a regular Joe. Good afternoon, another Joe.
Bob, I couldn't resist calling in. He's right. I am hungry. But the different context, soul food, so to speak. My suggestion to as a prevention of early symptoms or getting this coronavirus is chicken soup, or any of the different soups we have. Calbica, estofao. If you don't like
chicken soup,
chicken soup. There you go.
Hey, another Joe. Chicken soup, kohojo sao.
I like some. I want to share. I want everyone to start eating it so they don't have to worry about this coronavirus. Are you gonna? I just want to ask. Are you going to be talking about the coronavirus at all?
Oh yeah, it's on the card. The second item on the card is Lou, as you were. Third item is Lou versus the coronavirus.
So all I want to say is, okay, that's cool. I'll just listen, but I want to emphasize: turn to your elders because they know best how to deal with sickness in the family, and home remedies are the chicken soup or almost. Okay, Bob, I'll just listen now.
Well, you could have stopped right after you said turn to your elders, another Joe. That's always good advice. Listen to your elders. Hang on their every word. If they give any kind of advice, follow it to a T, another Joe. Right? Another Joe hung up. Okay. So, and now you Joes out there in our international radio listening audience, if I could have leave to proceed with the Second Amendment part of the show, I'd really appreciate it. I should get to name the order of topics here on the show. After all, I am the host. Right, Real Joe Cruz?
That's right, sir.
Yeah. Okay, so as I have warned in the past, those who don't like the Second Amendment probably aren't going to like the First Amendment any better. And the Bill of Rights is not a cafeteria. You can't go up and say, oh, I'd like a little bit of that, and I'd like that. Oh, I hate that one over there. I don't want any spinach or freedom of assembly. No, don't put that on my plate. You know, the Bill of Rights are a Kabbalist package. So we've got to support and exercise our rights thereunder, support and defend them all. So here's something again from Virginia. You'll recall Virginia is an eastern state that's trying really hard to be California. And they're working on getting people to sleep on the streets in the downtowns of their big cities, having outrageous taxes, a regulatory thicket that even a porcupine couldn't penetrate. And the new governor, Ralph Blackface Northam, has really been promoting gun control. So here's the latest. Legislation introduced last week suggests that Virginia Democrat lawmakers don't like to be harassed. Oh, they better block 93.3 on their radio, then. They don't want to listen to, darn sure don't want to listen to Tall Tales. But events this week suggest they may have no problem slandering fellow Virginians. Not content with destroying the Second Amendment with a rushed-through laundry list of gun control measures, Virginia lawmakers are now assaulting the First Amendment, the most cherished of constitutional guarantees. Virginia, HB 1627, introduced January 16th, would make it a Class 1 misdemeanor for engaging in, quote, threats and harassment of officials and property. According to the bill's summary, it would come into play only, quote, if the victim is the governor, governor-elect, lieutenant governor-elect, attorney general or attorney general-elect, a member or employee of the General Assembly, a justice of the Supreme Court of Virginia, or a judge of the Court of Appeals of Virginia. In other words, only the monoculo of Virginia is protected by this statute. The bill proposes that if any person with intent to coerce, intimidate, or harass any person shall use a computer or computer network to communicate obscene, vulgar, profane, lewd, lascivious, or indecent language, or make any suggestion or proposal of an obscene nature, or threaten any illegal or immoral act, he is guilty of a Class 1 misdemeanor. If passed and signed into law, calling Ralph Northam, quote, Blackface Northam, which I just did, would probably subject the offender to a fine and jail time, even though the governor admittedly wore blackface, and an early yearbook entry referred to him as Coon Man, according to Politico. It would also suggest that calling the lieutenant governor, whose name is Justin Fairfax, a predatory, and they spell the word wrong, they spell it P-E-R-V-E-R-T, a predatory pervert. Now, you know, when you're talking about this kind of pervert, it's not pronounced pervert, it's pronounced prevert. He's a pedophilic prevert. It may be off limits, although 2 women came forward last year to make detailed, credible allegations of sexual assault against him. As far as that goes, we may as well throw Mark Herring into the mix. I wonder if Mark Herring's nickname is Red. Is he a red herring? Virginia's Attorney General also openly admitted to wearing blackface. Civility, of course, is a good thing. Everyone can understand that. But with Virginia Democrats, civility doesn't cut both ways. Thousands of Second Amendment proponents gathered in Richmond Monday to exercise their First Amendment right to peaceably assemble and demonstrate against the string of gun control measures that have been rammed through the Commonwealth legislature. The demonstrators cut across all age groups and consisted of, well, I don't know, I might get in trouble for reading these words here. The demonstrators consisted of men, women. Am I in trouble yet, really? No, I'm okay so far.
You're telling some tall tales, sir.
Yeah, in this crowd, there were men and women. I don't know how anyone could ever tell the difference unless you went up and asked every single one of them, sir or ma'am, are you, but then they would be offended.
Identify yourself.
Yeah, they would be offended if you did that, right? You can't do that to them. Yeah, the group consisted of men, women, Christians, Jews, Muslims, agnostics, and atheists. The participants included Caucasians, African Americans, Hispanics, and Asian Chamorros, as were Asian Americans. Tadza Chamorro na. Ko sinya na Tanzania I Chamorro na tauto gi Virginia.
I bet there's an Asian Chamorro out there somewhere in the world.
Probably. They peacefully gathered, said what they came to say, and left the grounds cleaner than they had found them. Not a single person was arrested for violent behavior. One woman was reportedly detained for refusing to remove a face mask. Maybe she was scared of coronavirus. Yet to hear Virginia Democrats describe it, Adolf Hitler had been reincarnated and the place was a tinderbox set to go off. Virginia Congressman Don Bear is representative. Quote, annual gun lobby protest and lobby day protest in Richmond drew a large number of white nationalists. Now, if you're white, obviously you're a white nationalist, right? And if you're a white nationalist, then obviously you're a neo-Nazi. Everybody knows that. That's just 2 and 2 equals 4. Yeah, the annual Gun Lobby Day protest in Richmond drew large numbers of white nationalists, militias, and racist conspiracy theorists this year. Neo-Nazis tried to use this rally to launch violent attacks. And it just didn't happen. So what is it that President Trump calls things, this kind of news?
Fake news, sir.
Fake news.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So even members of the Virginia legislature know what fake news is. Trump's symbolism and memories of Charlottesville, this guy goes on to say, Trump's symbolism and memories of Charlottesville are vivid in many minds today. Self-described Democrat socialist Lee Carter called the peaceful demonstration an act of terrorism. Well, if it's politically correct, isn't that the definition of terrorism? The pro-gun people that terrorized Richmond yesterday probably don't realize that all they did was tag team with fascists, strengthen the liberals' resolve to pass gun control bills, and force the most gun-friendly Democrat to not show up for a day. Idiots, he added. Absolute idiots. All in the name of civility, of course. Nice. His constituents are idiots now. Democrat delegate Ibrahim Samara chose the House floor to belittle his fellow Virginians. Yesterday, the demonstrations attracted the attention of neo-Nazis, alt-right trolls, white supremacists, and other racist fringe elements who use guns as an absolute need to advance their violent agenda. He railed, reading from a script. Samira must have written his speech before the event. Uniformed law enforcement officers were also in striking distance, not as security, but as demonstrators. Although prominent Virginians such as George Washington and Thomas Jefferson would have been disgusted at what had happened to their beloved Commonwealth, James Madison would have been especially heartbroken. In addition to being a founder and early president like the other two, Madison drafted the first 10 amendments to the Constitution, known as the Bill of Rights. Within a single week, Madison would have witnessed Virginia Democrats trash the First Amendment protections of speech and assembly, and the Second Amendment right to keep and bear arms. Also, when the Senate approved the confiscation of privately held weapons without notice or hearing Wednesday, they trashed the Fourth Amendment guarantees of due process. In addition, Senate Bill 399 was introduced this week, a proposal to join the National Popular Vote Compact. That would bypass Article 2, Electoral College provisions governing presidential elections, and is extremely dangerous. The National Popular Vote Compact. As our 45th president would say, sad. The Supreme Court of the United States is freedom's ultimate defender. 2021 will be a busy year for the High Court with characters like the Virginia legislature on the loose. You know, maybe those red flag laws wouldn't be so bad after all. You know, if you could pin a red flag on somebody and have a judge say, yeah, these people really are not the sharpest knives in the drawer. All right. So let's go from there, Real Joe Cruz. Let's go to, if it's okay with another Joe, we'll go to Zemi Ikotny. So here we go with Zemi Ikotny. We got the Daily News, which about once every 6 months runs a local editorial, whether it needs to or not. And the Post, which 3 or 4 days out of 5 has a hard-hitting, real editorial dealing with local issues. Today is no exception. Instead of running something of local interest, today the Daily News ran engaging in tough conversations worth the risk. This is from Bruce Bond and Eric Olson, special to USA Today. So I did read it, and they do make some good points. So I probably shouldn't, but I'm going to give a little airtime to what ran on the editorial page of the Daily News today. Bond and Olson say, as we journey into a new decade, it's natural to consist where we stand as a nation and the people, who we are as a people. That's so important. This is Olson and Bond. It's not Robert Underwood, no. Okay, to paraphrase Ronald Reagan, are we better off today than we were 10 years ago? The only certainty is the uncertainty we face. The President of the United States has been impeached. A critical election cycle looms, and our nation appears more polarized than it was at the start of the last decade. It's not all doom and gloom. A survey released in December by Public Agenda USA Today Ipsos found that almost 40% of Republicans and nearly 50% of Democrats would cross party lines to elect a leader who can bring us together. That's not very substantial. This isn't exactly comfortable to those on the political extremes. Here I am on the political extreme, who tend to view bipartisan cooperation as working with the enemy and finding common ground as a capitulation on principles. Yep. As co-founders of the Common Ground Committee, a nonprofit dedicated to bringing light, not heat, to public discourse, it's a criticism that's all too familiar, but it's one that deeply misunderstands the meaning of the word. The value of common ground is not just outcome, it's conversation. Tell that to the folks in Virginia who are trying to circumscribe the free speech rights of its citizens. Conversations about politics should be productive and healthy. Instead, it's increasingly viewed as pointless and destructive exercise. Almost 40% of Americans say politics has them stressed. These would be the snowflakes in the population. While 1 in 5 report that a friendship has been damaged as a result of a political argument, according to a University of Nebraska-Lincoln study. Maybe this is the time to find out who your friends really are. This matches what we hear from people all over the country. When given the choice to talk about politics with someone who holds different views, their instinct is to avoid conversation. No! You know, I haven't done the read-in for Tall Tales lately. Maybe I ought to start doing it again once in a while, but that's what we look for. We're looking for disagreement. You know, this idea, well, can't we all get along, does not do a job on surfacing the issues and helping anybody understand the issues. It's a way of avoiding the issues. When given the choice to talk about politics with someone who holds different views, their instinct is to avoid conversation. After all, why risk a friendship when there isn't likely to be a consensus? Now, there's a word that's overrated. If you have 15 people in a room and you survey and you ask them a couple of political questions, anything less than a 15-0 vote on any of the questions is not consensus. Consensus means everybody agrees. Not all conversations will end in agreement, which is fine. Inevitably, there will be areas where there is no common ground to be found. Even so, the point of searching for common ground is not to force-feed agreement on a particular issue. It's to force-feed conversation that ultimately leads to greater understanding. So, you know, this idea of common ground, conversation, bipartisanship, there are some things that if it's part of your system of values and beliefs, you're not going to compromise on. Let's take, for instance, abortion. Well, let's just compromise here. You know, Bob, we know that you're 100% against abortion, correct? Can't we compromise? Couldn't we come up with a figure that we could both agree on? Would it be okay with you if we only aborted half of the babies? Would that be acceptable to you? I'll go even farther. How about just 40? No! There are some things you don't compromise on. So, nice play, you know, but I see this effort to reach common ground and this agreement and this bipartisanship, etc., as a way of talking people out of things they should not be talked out of. You know, how about a good example would be the United States Constitution and its treatment of people held to labor or servitude or labor. You go back and read your Constitution, and, you know, I carry one with me all the time. I'm reading it all the time. I will find that section here, I hope, in the Constitution that I'm talking about. Yeah, this is Article 4, Section 2, Paragraph 3. No person held to service or labor in one state under the laws thereof, escaping into another, shall in consequence of any law or regulation therein be discharged from such service or labor, but shall be delivered up on the claim of the party to whom such labor or service is due. And there's another section here that I probably are not going to be able to find. So, you know, a person held to service or labor, by the time we got around to the 13th Amendment, we called them slaves. But when the Constitution was adopted, They were persons held to service or labor. And when it came time to apportion representatives to the House of Representatives, then we counted everybody except people held to service or labor who were counted only as 3/5. In other words, only 3/5 of the slaves were counted as far as apportionment to the House of Representatives. Now, a lot of people stand up and say, see how racist the North was? But not so, because the North said, we don't want you to count any of them. You shouldn't be accorded members of the House of Representatives on the basis of people that can't vote. So we want 0. So they compromised on 3/5. And then there's another section in the Constitution that says that there shall be no law or no amendment banning the trade of persons held for service or labor until 1808. That's what compromise gets you. You know, do you want? How about doing that nowadays on some of these affirmative action programs? Not a good idea. Okay, so got a break coming up here.
Family Finance has been serving the people of Guam since 1959, and they'll continue to be there for you in the years to come. Whether you're looking to get a personal loan for that summer vacation or paying off those long overdue bills, Family Finance has got you covered. Apply for a personal loan from $1,000 up to $3,600 by calling Family Finance in Agutya at 475-4545, Upper Tumon at 647-5626, or in Dededo, 633-4473. Family Finance, serving the people of Guam since 1959.
The Extra Point with Jerry Roberts of Guam Training.
It's one of the most valuable questions we can ever ask ourselves in our career and the rest of life, too. But our ego rarely allows us to do it. I'm Jerry Roberts, and at 7:20 a.m. on The Ray Gibson Show, we'll ask that question and see how you feel about it.
You can find daily transcripts of The Extra Point at guamtraining.com. Tune in every weekday morning at 7:20 for The Extra Point with Jerry Roberts. Brought to you by Guahan Insurance Services and First Hawaiian Bank on 93.3 The Point.
The UOG Endowment Foundation presents How to Say I Love You, Love Languages in the Pacific, Thursday, February 13th at the Guam Museum from 6 p.m. to 9 p.m. $60 per person includes cultural delicacies, free-flowing drinks, and live entertainment. Love Languages in the Pacific will benefit the liberal arts and fine arts programs.
Welcome back to Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie, Guam's single voice of reason. Call now, 888-TALK. That's 888-8255.
Okay, so then we have the Post, and the Post, as usual, has really got something going for it here, and it ties in with a news story that the Post has been working on, which still needs a little bit more development. Editorial in the Post: did GovGuam get a good deal by paying $1.5 million for the right to lease land and its termite-infested building? Now, what we're talking about is the former, what used to be the temporary legislature building down in Aganya. At one time, it was the headquarters for the Department of Education, if that helps you remember what building we're talking about. Now, there was a story in last Friday's Post quoting the director of the Bureau of Budget and Management Research, Lester Carlson, saying that the government of Guam had bought the building and had paid $1 million for the building and got $1.5 million to fix up the building, and would have to pay a lease rental of about $6,000 for the next 15 years, as though you could buy a building separate from the real property upon which it sits. And I tried to figure out a way that this could actually be, I mean, what's the reality? And the only thing I could come up with was that the government of Guam would attach large, lighter-than-air aircraft, blimps or dirigibles or something like that, so that at the end of the 15 years, they would just ratchet that building up off the ground, carry it somewhere else, and plop it down, and stop paying the 15-year lease rental. In other words, it's made no sense whatsoever that you could buy a building on a leasehold. So then the Post ran a story today, which I'll get to in the card, where what we find out is the government of Guam bought the leasehold interest of a Taiwan corporation. Now, you can buy a leasehold interest, Real Joe Cruz. Let's say that we're talking about Blackacre, and let's say that you own Blackacre, and I lease Blackacre from you for 20 years. And absent a prohibition in the lease, I could sell my leasehold interest to XYZ Corporation. And they step into my shoes as far as being your tenant, the lessee, on your lease. So you can buy a leasehold. Now, if you get out your Law and Order notebook there, Real Joe Cruz. So here's a nice technical distinction. A lease for less than 1 year is personalty. In other words, it's personal property, like that big snazzy limousine that you drive to work in every day. What is that, a Lamborghini?
No, it's a Ferrari, sir.
That's what I thought. Yeah, I'm not real good on Lamborghinis and Ferraris. Right, yeah, okay. But a leasehold for more than a year is realty. It's real property, realty, land. So that's what happened. But the editorial is questioning what exactly are we doing here? On October 10, 2019, a purchase agreement to buy a 50-year leasehold interest in a piece of land encompassing 3,883 square meters with a termite-infested building that once housed the legislature was signed on behalf of the government of Guam. Now, I really want to see that lease, that document, the lease. I want to see if there's any extra charge for the termites.
Oh.
Yeah.
They probably got a good deal on those termites.
Yeah, so maybe they bought it just for the termites, you know. If they shouldn't have paid extra for the termites, because if they need termites, I can tell them where to find a bunch of termites. By the signature of the Department of Administration Director, he's not this Department of Administration Director, he is the Director of Administration post, Edward Byrne, this agreement to buy the leasehold right on the property with a price tag of $1.5 million became a done deal in October of 2019. Okay, so what we're saying here now is that the government of Guam did not buy the building. Now, I suspect that the Dow averages for blimp and dirigible companies took a dip when this news came out. That the government won't need blimps and dirigibles to pick that building up in 15 years. Because the government didn't buy the building, they bought the leasehold on the property for $1.5 million. But that price isn't the only cost. In addition for paying for the leasehold interest, the ground lease requires a monthly payment of $6,366 a month up to October 2021, when the lease escalates 10% every 5 years. Clearly, it's not outright ownership of the property, so Gov Guam will continue to make payments on the ground lease. Well, no, it's not outright ownership of the property. It's a lease. Big, big difference. Okay, and then the rest of the article talks about the $2.5 million for the leasehold property was provided by the Department of Interior, and the money was supposed to be for homeless shelters. So I'm not going to go into homeless shelters. That's an issue by itself that we could devote a whole program to. What I'm interested in is, are we buying something that we really didn't need to buy? And that's my suspicion. My suspicious mind says we ponied up $1.5 million for termites. And I don't know what the market value of termites is right now, but I suspect for $1.5 million you could buy a whole shift load of termites if you've been following the impeachment proceedings.
That's the unit of measurement now, sir?
A shift load, yeah. Yeah. You could buy a whole shift load of termites. The seller of the leasehold is Taehong Corporation, Guam, which is owned by Taiwan-based shareholders. Taehong was the landlord to the Guam legislature for decades until senators relocated a few years ago to the Guam Congress building. Having spent decades renting from Taehong, the senators were smart. Can you use senators and smart in the same sentence, real Joe Cruz?
I was just wondering if you made a mistake, sir.
Yeah, it's got to be a grammatical blunder, isn't it?
More than likely.
Yeah, the senators were smart in deciding to relocate by spending money on land the government owns. The legislature now occupies the rehabilitated legislature building, which has become a nice landmark in Hagåtña. Then there's more about the homeless shelter. But instead of sticking to that plan, the administration of Governor Lulian Guerrero and Joshua Tenorio has decided to use the money to consolidate government offices that help people with disabilities and job seekers. They will be relocated from their current locations. Now, the administration has decided to better use Uncle Sam's money to improve government agencies that already function in existing offices. So what's going to happen to those leaseholds? The seller of this leasehold interest in the old Guam Legislature building, which has been owned by Taehong Corporation for decades, and I'm not so sure of that either. I'm not so sure that Taehong owns the real property. They may own the lease, but I'm checking on that. GovGuam agreed to purchase the leasehold interest in an as-is condition, meaning accepts the building with all of its flaws. And GovGuam also agreed to fork out the money for repairs, including to replace termite-damaged wood and termite-treat other wood. GovGuam agreed to put in a non-refundable down payment of $350,000 so the landlord could begin renovations with government money before the old disused building is handed over. As we used to say, such a deal. You're going to give the landlord $1.5 million to buy the leasehold, and then you're going to finance rehabbing the building, the leasehold for which you just bought. There are many questions to ask about this deal. Could GovGuam have better spent the money on existing government land? Should GovGuam have used the building for homeless as originally intended? With $2.5 million in cash, was this the best the GovGuam could get? If moving existing offices for people with disabilities and veterans to a new one-stop location is the new priority, did GovGuam shop around for better deals on existing offices for the Office of Veterans Affairs, Guam Department of Labor Job Assistance Center, Department of Integrated Services for Individuals with Disabilities, and others? Administration asks Interior for $1.5 million more for a northern homeless shelter. In letting Interior know of the change of plan, the governor's office also asked the feds to provide $1.5 million of new funding toward a homeless shelter in northern Guam. Maybe they want to buy another beat-up building up in the northern part of the island. It's not clear if Interior will work out more cash to help Guam's homeless. What's the old saying? Once burned, twice careful. The overarching goal, in addition to providing a one-stop location for important service, is to meaningfully continue our effort to revitalize our capital city of Hagåtña. the Leon Guerrero Tenorio administration wrote to the federal government in 2019. And then the Post asked the question, is providing our homeless neighbors with shelter not part of revitalizing Agania? I think, a real, of course, the way modern cities are going, like Los Angeles and San Francisco and Seattle, unless you have large crowds of homeless people with their tents and shelters out on the city streets and defecating on the street, you really can't call yourself a modern city. Yeah, I'll withdraw that. So I still have a lot of questions. Who owns the property? Why did we have to buy a lease when the legislature was leasing it? What happened to the legislature lease? How much was the legislature paying? What is the fair market value for rent in that area for termite-infested buildings? And so on. So, yeah, this is a pretty easy one, Real Joe Cruz. The Post gets the coveted blue star. Once again. Okay, now let me take a look at the card here. First item on the card, Tall Tales versus Jim Bohannon. And then we've got Lou versus the year 2022. You know what happens in 2022, Real Joe Cruz?
I'm not sure, sir.
An election.
Oh.
Yeah. And then we've got Lou versus the coronavirus. I hope she wins. Then we've got Tall Tales versus Mike Carlson. We'll be coming back to that building. And we've got Moylan versus Barnes, parenthesis, part-time legislature. And we've got Eric Miller versus Race Judicata. You're going to have to pull out your Law and Order notebooks for that one. And we've got Pedo versus the Post, which has been on the card. I just haven't gotten to it. The hoax of racism versus common sense, which we talked about once, but I've got something additional. And then I've got Paco Pedo versus Pacell and Alvarez. Then I've got Chief Ignacio versus Public Safety. Tall Tales versus the Hell No group. And Robert Underwood versus us, plus Martian Punzlan. Now, this is really important because it's about who we are. Yeah. And when I say we, I'm not using that southern form of we inclusive that is pronounced weans. If I say weans, that means the person I'm talking to is part of the we. Robert is not using weans when he's talking about who we are. Okay, so we're up to that the break right before the big halftime show. I'll be back in just a minute or two.
Hi, welcome to this ad for new Subway sliders, starting at $1.99 each. How do you want it?
Cheer Squad. Woo! Go Subway sliders, starting at $1.99 each. Woo! Give me a ham and jack slider.
Ham and jack slider.
Give me an Italian spice slider.
Italian spice slider.
What's that spell?
It doesn't really spell anything.
New Subway sliders, starting at $1.99 each. Go Sliders!
Subway, make it what you want.
GRMC's Neuroscience and Neurology Department treats a wide spectrum of disorders associated with the nervous system, spine, and brain. Some of the more common disorders include seizures, epilepsy, dementia, sleep disorders, migraine, and stroke, which is one of the leading causes of death on Guam. GRMC's neuroscience team is equipped with the latest technology and the finest neurological doctors. To make an appointment, contact GRMC Specialty Clinics at 645-5500.
Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie is brought to you by Bank Pacific, banking on the Pacific for 65 years.
First item on the card here, Tall Tales versus Jim Bohannon. Now I'm going to have to do my Rush imitation again, Real Joe Cruz. Real Joe Cruz, you know I don't like to talk about myself, but this time I have to.
That's fine, sir.
Yeah, because it's about me. All right. So I was listening. I listen to The Point all the time in my car and when I'm at home. And I heard this ad for Jim Bohannon, who's a regular, one of our coworkers on Tall Tales here. And the ad said that some rating group rated him as one of the 100 most important talk radio hosts in the country. And I figured, yeah, that's pretty good. But then I started thinking about it. Did they leave anybody out of that 100?
I believe they did, sir.
Yeah, so I thought maybe I had to get a hold of these guys and say, hey, I think you maybe, send them a link to Facebook and some biographical information, etc. But then I thought, no, I better not. I better reach out to Jim Bohannon. And I said, I listen to Jim all the time, and he's a really good talk show. A little different style than mine. And I was thinking, God, I'd feel so bad if I reached out and they said, yeah, Bob, you're right. We made a mistake. We're going to put you in the top 100.
Nice.
And then I thought, if I did that, then I'd be running the risk. I'd be putting several folks that I really like in danger. That would be our co-radio talk show hosts here on Tall Tales.
Oh, I see.
Jim Bohannon, Ray, of course, Greg Kilmeade, Sean Hannity, and Rush.
Yep.
So I thought, wow, if I came on the list and had bumped one of those guys off, I'd really feel bad about it.
Yeah.
So I think from now on, maybe we could work on a promo here, finding that I am the 101st important, the 101 important talk show host in the country.
That makes very good sense.
Yeah, and it just shows my general charitable nature too, don't you think?
So humble, sir.
Yeah, I am an extremely humble person, and if you ask me, I'll spend a fair amount of time telling you how humble I am, because I'm pretty proud of my humility. Okay, so then the next item on the card here, putting aside Jim Bohannon and our co-workers here, our co-hosts, Rush and Sean. When Ray and I first talked about me coming on here and doing this show at 4, and he told me, well, become right after Rush Limbaugh. I said, I'll do it because I've always liked Rush Limbaugh, and this would really be good for Rush's career to do the warm-up for my show. No doubt it'll really increase his listenership nationwide. So there were other good reasons for doing it, but that certainly was one. Okay, and then next item on the card is Lou versus 2022. And she made some, as I keep saying, she made some gigantic strides over the weekend with her little Chautauqua over there at the Hackabotan building. Saturday's paper, a picture of this old lady just overcome by tears and sadness, right? And all of the testimonials from the Manamku, who are absolutely sure that had it not been for Lou, they would not have gotten their war claims payments. And of course, Tall Tales listeners know that that just ain't true. That Mike San Nicolas is the guy that has enabled all of this stuff, and it's not a done deal yet. I'm looking here at the Daily News, and there's a subheading, payments by January 31 or earlier. Reads like this: the processing center opened a day after the U.S. Treasury and the governor signed an agreement that sets out the administrative process for paying adjudicated war claims. GovGuam expects the Treasury will return the $14 million used for the local war claims payment program once Mike San Nicolas's bill becomes law. No Mike San Nicolas, no payments. But who's going to get all the credit for this? when you go to the fiesta or you go to the dead or something like that, and you're standing in the chow line, the old saying is that the line forms at the end. Now, people will make exceptions, and they will allow, maybe a priest to come to the front of the line, or the guest of honor, or the birthday celebrant. Or it never happens when I go to one of those things that they let the old people come to the front of the line. That probably depends more on who the old people are than any feeling for the old people. So that's what Lou did. She saw Mike San Nicolas in this line that he actually constructed himself. If it weren't for Mike San Nicolas, there wouldn't be any line. And he's still fighting for the island of Guam to get to the front of that line, to the table where the food is. In this case, it's not the food, it's the money. But Lou comes along, and she started handing out some sandwiches and stuff and saying, "You don't need to go to that table. You can get it from me. Just remember who fed you when you were waiting all this time." So she's done it in a masterful fashion. She has squeezed, hundreds of inches of earned media out of this extravaganza. But when you come right down to it, Gov Guam expects the Treasury will return the $14 million used for the local war claims payment once Delegate Mark San Nicolas' bill becomes law. And I keep asking this question that I shouldn't be. No one should ask this question, and kind of spoil the party for the old folks. What happens if San Nicolas' bill doesn't pass? What happens if some senator says, "I don't like the idea of this stuff. Why should we be spending good money to pay for something the Japanese did? I'm not going to vote for this on consent calendar." And it falls apart, and we don't get it. And once again, I know what Lou's going to say. I'm going to say, "Lou, what you did was fiscally completely irresponsible. You're making a bet with the people's money." And Lou's response is going to be, "The Manamku have waited long enough. I would do whatever it takes to help the Manamku. The Manamku are dying every day." And of course, in a world where emotion almost always beats reason, Lou wins the argument. Mike San Nicolas stands up and says the same thing. And Mike San Nicolas, the meme of Mike San Nicolas is him sitting on a chair surrounded by large bunches of sour grapes. And then there's something else that occurs to me. And once again, it's apostasy to bring these things up at a time when the Manamku are finally standing in line, not getting checks, they're just standing in line. And Lou is over there with Crystal Paco and doing all of this really good media work. The Meritorious Claims Commission charges a 5% administrative fee for administering this program. So if there is an award of $10,000, the feds get to keep 5% of that $10,000. I don't have my calculator handy, but I think 5% of $10,000, is that $500, Real Joe Cruz?
I believe so, sir.
Yeah. The other day I was talking about 60,000 when I meant 600, remember?
I do, sir.
Yeah, so that means we're paying, or actually not we, I hear the music in the background. I'm hearing Dave Brubeck's Tall Tales in the background. So I'm going to come back to this right after the big halftime show.
The Point is KUSG, Hagåtña, Guam, 93.3 FM and 104.3 HD3.
Mamba remembered. I'm Jessica Stone, Fox News. Tributes are pouring in from Kobe Bryant fans around the world. The 41-year-old Lakers legend died in a helicopter crash along with his 13-year-old daughter Gianna on Sunday. Fox's Jessica Rosenthal reports from the crash site.
I'm on a street across from the hillside where the helicopter crashed, where Kobe Bryant fans have gathered to get a glimpse of the site.
My childhood, he's the one that got me into basketball. So it's a childhood thing, and it's just so unreal that it's him and his daughter is gone.
Jonathan Esquivel wore his number 24 jersey. He and his family brought purple and gold balloons to the area.
It's hard. It's hard to believe.
Some fans drove more than an hour to come here.
I think he was a huge part of LA culture, and it's just a shame to see him go and in the manner that he did.
While not originally from here, Kobe's 20-year NBA career was with the LA Lakers, and he helped bring us 5 championships. In Calabasas, Jessica Rosenthal, Fox News.
Retired NBA player Julius Erving spoke to Fox.
When I first heard the news, that's what I thought about. I thought about Joe and Pam and, the parents losing a son and a granddaughter. We have to find a way to cope with. I think about his wife and the other daughters who got this news.
NTSB board member Jennifer Homendy says a team is on its way to investigate.
The history of the pilot and whatever crew was on board. We'll be looking at maintenance records of the helicopter.
All on board were killed. The New York Times reports that former National Security Advisor John Bolton says in a new book President Trump wanted to freeze Ukrainian military aid until the country committed to investigate his Democratic rivals. America is listening to Fox News.
Mezcla Chamorro Fusion Bistro in the Grand Plaza Hotel Tumon is now serving your favorite daily specials. Come one, come all. Enjoy your Monday with that savory caron pica. Your Tuesday with your one and only candied salmon. Stroll by on Wednesday to try that local-style oxtail caro. Or Thursday if you're feeling that pan-crisp pork belly served over roasted sweet potato mash. And don't forget that misoyaki black cod with garlic mashed potatoes on Fridays. Busy at work and still want your fix? Call us at 969-2652 for your takeout order.
Yikes, are those Christmas bills coming in already? Those high-interest credit cards at 16, 18, even 24%? Well, we have a New Year's solution for you. A Bank Pacific personal loan with rates as low as 4.65% to pay off those expensive credit cards. It's easy, it's fast, and it's as low as 4.65% APR.
Bank Pacific, where others put branches, we place roots.
Equal credit opportunity lender as low as 4.65%. Conditions apply.
China is delaying the end of its Lunar New Year holiday to help contain the coronavirus outbreak. The death toll now stands at 80 in China. The lockdown is extended from Wuhan, where the illness was first detected, to 17 cities, with more than 50 million people around the country. Meantime, a charter aircraft will help evacuate Americans from the U.S. consulate in Wuhan.
The U.S. State Department is organizing a single flight out of Wuhan, China, the epicenter of this virus, to fly out its consulate staff and some private U.S. citizens.
Fox's Christina Coleman there. Desperate times demand desperate measures. Local media reporting children taking up arms in a region of Mexico. Fox's Tom Rigotti explains.
Villagers in southern Mexico are arming kids as young as 8 years old to defend against violent drug cartels. Over 20 children in Chilapa have been trained and armed to defend against Los Ardios, a ruthless gang that's been preying on the region. 10 local musicians were gunned down in Chilapa last week while returning from a party. The gang is blamed for the massacre. Children have been armed in other communities in the state of Guerrero, one of Mexico's most violent regions due to bloody turf wars between rival drug gangs. Tom Rigotti, Fox News.
There were nearly 35,000 homicides in 2019 in Mexico, a record high for the country. Help for those suffering after a huge warehouse explosion in Houston, Texas. Fox's Salgian Grasso reports.
We are not going to forget them. The vow from Houston Mayor Sylvester Turner that assistance will be provided to residents whose homes were damaged after a massive explosion at a warehouse that killed 2 workers and injured 20 others, 2 other warehouse workers, and 18 others from neighboring homes and businesses. The early Friday explosion occurred inside a building at Watson Grinding and Manufacturing. More than 200 homes and surrounding neighborhoods were damaged as the force of the blast shattered windows, knocked down ceilings, bent garage doors.
Half a day, I'm Governor Lou Leon Guerrero.
And I'm Lieutenant Governor Joshua Tenorio.
If you survived the Japanese occupation during World War II, filed a claim under the World War II Loyalty Recognition Act, and received a letter from the Foreign Claims Settlement Commission saying you are entitled to receive monetary compensation, then you may have an adjudicated claim.
Bring your claim letter and a valid government ID to our Guam War Claims Processing Center at the Old Hakubotan Building in Tamuning, Mondays to Fridays from 9 a.m. to 4 p.m., and we will help you process your claim. If you have any questions or would like to know more, call us at 472-8931 or visit our website at warclaims.guam.gov.
Getting to this point wasn't easy, and our work isn't over. But we are now beginning to heal old wounds and honor our greatest generation. And we say to those still alive to hear it, your long wait is over.
Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie is brought to you by Bank Pacific, banking on the Pacific for 65 years.
So here we are back on Tall Tales for the second half of Tall Tales after that great big halftime show that we all come to love so much. It means I've got just one half a show left to go. And before the halftime show, I was talking about Lou's public relations extravaganza, how she took something that Michael St. Nicholas enabled and turned it into a tremendous public relations victory for herself. And as I've mentioned earlier, I can see I'm prophesizing that a lot of the video that's shot today we'll be seeing back in the fall of 2022. There'll be a lot of testimonials, a lot of old folks in a very sympathetic, cast in a very sympathetic light, showing extreme gratitude for Lou for getting their money. When it isn't Lou that got the money at all, Lou just took a gamble with my money to pay it out early. If the Treasury, if St. Nicholas's Bill's 1365 passes and the president signs it, then everybody's going to get a check in the mail. Everyone who has an adjudicated claim. They won't have to stand in line for a minute. Go to the mailbox and there it'll be. No photo ops, no testimonials, no statements, etc. But, of course, that isn't the way Lou was able to engineer it. So she's really squeezed a lot of good PR out of this. As I've said before, I've given her a lot of credit for that. I just wonder what would happen if 1365 didn't pass. And then the other, kind of fly in the so-called ointment is that it costs the awardee 5% of the size of the award as an administrative fee. That's what the War Claims Commission is charging. So when Lou hands out these checks, are they going to be less than 5%? Since the feds are not going to reimburse that 5%. Or if it's a $10,000 award, will there be a check for $10,000 and the $500 administrative fee just comes out of the General Treasury? Well, I'm going to try to shepherd our listeners through this particular matter, and I've got some help on the phone. Good afternoon, Shepherd.
Thank you, Mr. Klitzkie. Can you hear me?
I can hear you fine.
Okay. On just a side note, a peripheral note. On Saturday in the PDN front page was the article on the reparations and it was focused on the suffering of the survivors and of course those who didn't survive as well. And I read the entire article and it was very well written, and I'm for. And I'm so happy that everyone who can, if this helps them reach closure. But I just wished whoever wrote the article would have also acknowledged there's some other people who suffered. I believe there were some leathernecks who suffered greatly as well during the liberation time. And I don't want to compare anybody's suffering, but we all this talk. No one seems to. We should never forget those who gave all.
1,548 Marines were killed liberating Guam, Shepard.
Yeah, I did not know. I know it was a great number, but it is staggering, or it's very hard. I wouldn't say heartwarming. I can't find the words to to express the gratitude.
Agreed. Good point. Very good point.
Well, I don't know if you can hear me anymore. I don't have any volume, but I'm going to hang up. Thanks, Bob.
I can hear you fine, and thank you for shepherding us through that, Shep.
Thank you. Take care.
All right. Yeah, an interesting point. 1,548 Marines were killed in the liberation of Guam. And I suppose the death benefit at that time was probably a couple $100 for the, for the wife or mother or whatever of the Marine who made the ultimate sacrifice. Not the same thing at all. And not to disparage those people who lived through the Japanese occupation, some of whom went through some really rough times. And it is unfortunate that Madeline didn't take the John McCain deal back in over 10 years ago, because we would not have been paying for those awards with our own money. And a lot of people died between then and 2016. In order to be eligible for the current war claims, you had to have been alive when this bill passed in early 2016. So once again, I have a feeling we haven't heard the last of this. Lou is going to look for every earned media opportunity that she can, which is fine. I can understand it. But I have my fingers tightly crossed that St. Nicholas's bill passes, because, we have to get over this idea that we give money away. Every time something makes our tummy warm, we give money away. You're giving my money away. Maybe it makes my tummy warm too, but we shouldn't be. A government's function is not to be giving money away. What I'm looking for is an effective, efficient government that within the rule of law provides basic government services. That's all. Okay, first item on the card. Second item on the card, Lou versus coronavirus. Now, we know Lou is a nurse. She talked a lot about that during the campaign, about how she would be concerned with health care. And there's an article in today's Post. It says the Commonwealth Healthcare Corporation says no coronavirus cases in CNMI. The Commonwealth Healthcare Corporation said a message being circulated on social media of coronavirus case on Saipan is false. It has come to our attention that a story has been circulating today that there is coronavirus case on Saipan. This information is false as of now, January 27. No coronavirus cases or suspected cases are in the CNMI, the organization stated on its Facebook page at around noon Monday. You can tell how important it is. They put it right on their Facebook page. Department of Public Health and Social Services director. No, she's not. Linda DeNorsi is the Director of Public Health and Social Services, not of any department. Said she too has confirmed with her counterparts in Saipan. This letter that's going around, I don't know where it came from, but I was informed that there are no cases in Saipan. Public health officials said the spread of this type of illness can be combated with good hygiene practices. Wash hands often with soap and water for at least 20 seconds. Use an alcohol-based hand sanitizer if soap and water are not available. Cover your mouth and nose with a tissue or your sleeve when coughing or sneezing. You mean all that time that my cough used to come to work with me, I was supposed to be covering my nose with my sleeve? Okay, cover. I think we'll make that the house rule, Real Joe Cruz. If you have to cough or sneeze, I don't want to see any tissues, or I want to see your sleeve over your mouth and nose. You got that, Real Joe Cruz?
I got it, sir.
All right. And then avoid contact with sick people. Stay home or seek medical attention if you're not feeling well, even if you're the host of a radio talk show and you abide by that general show business principle that says the show must go on. Okay, so that's from the Post, straight from the Commonwealth Healthcare Corporation in Saipan. Now, I have a memo that I got on social media from a very well-known company here in Guam. I would say a reputable company, but this is what it says. To all staff, the deadly coronavirus has cases now in Saipan and is very close to our home. The company is purchasing Clorox wipes and hand sanitizer to put in all offices for staff use. We request you all to wipe your hands and keyboards and desk intermittently throughout the day as a precaution. Make sure to wash your hands frequently and then put on hand sanitizer. This virus can spread through saliva, so it is much more dangerous and easier to spread than the previous SARS virus. If any customer comes in looking like, no, they got this right. If any customer comes in looking like they have a fever, well, maybe they're not correct on their detection of diseases, but their grammar and their intersectionality is right on point. If a customer comes in and they look like they have a fever, even if they're not Siamese twins, I mean conjoined twins, please give them tissue and request them to wipe their hands with wipes and use hand sanitizer and stay in a distance when speaking. If you're feeling sick or have fever, let your supervisor know when you are to go home immediately for the sake of the rest of your coworkers' safety. We also encourage you to purchase your own wipes and sanitizer for your family and especially children to use daily in school and at home for everyone's safety and precaution. I got to take just a second here, Real Joe Cruz. Although I'm not woke, I am with it. So here's my demonstration. And then right here, look what I've got right here attached to my iPad case. Okay. So I remember when my cough and I used to come to work, and I used to caution you to stay away from the speaker on your phone. As you can see, it's okay. You don't have to be too worried about the speaker on your phone today. I think I've taken all the necessary precautions. So there we are. We have it from the social media, and we have it from the Post. The one thing we haven't gotten it from is from the governor, and that's why this is shown on the card as Lou versus coronavirus. I would expect some words of instruction, perhaps some words of comfort, to come from the mouth of the governor herself, even if reporters had to go over to the Hackaboten building to catch her. Because, you know, especially given her health background, I would expect her to speak out on this and not have us deal with secondhand information from the Commonwealth Health Center or what's floating around on social media. So that's Lou versus coronavirus. And once again, I hope Lou wins. I don't want coronavirus to win.
Maybe it's just, it's not an outbreak, sir. It's just cases.
Yeah, and it could be blown. Yeah, it could be just cases. And we've got to check. It may be just blown out of a proportion. And we also have to check with Melissa Savaris and Datado. It could be just too much exaggeration. Yeah. Until we find out about that, we really can't. I cannot make a definitive ruling here on Tall Tales, Real Joe Cruz. The matter is still under advisement. Okay, the next item on the card is Tall Tales versus Lester Carlson. We kind of got into this during Zemi Kotny, but you remember last Friday, Lester Carlson was quoted liberally in the paper saying, "We bought the old legislature building. We bought the building, and we paid $2.5 million for the building, and we're remodeling it. And, oh yeah, by the way, for 15 years, we got to pay about $6,000 a month for the building." And of course, that was really wonderful for me because I was able to use that image of attaching the building to a blimp and picking it up. So I went through some of the questions that are troubling me during the period on the editorial, but something else troubles me, and this is a process trouble. Why is the Director of Budget and Management Research speaking out on this entire matter? We expect the Director of Budget and Management Research to give us fiscal and financial information, not to come along and with an impossible theory that we bought a building on a leasehold. And why did he say that? Is he trying to confuse us? Was he trying to pass something along that was wrong? Because we didn't buy the building. We couldn't buy the building when he tells us there's a 15-year leasehold. So what was Lester thinking of when all of this was going on? So here's the Post article. After a GovGuam director signed a purchase agreement on behalf of GovGuam to buy the right to lease, not buy outright, a piece of land with a termite-infested building for $1.5 million, GovGuam's costs don't end there. In addition to buying the leasehold right, you know, and they can't get this right. You can buy a leasehold. You don't have to say the leasehold right. Or to buy the right to lease. A lease is real property. In addition to buying the leasehold right, GovGuam also has agreed to pay the ground lease, which means what they're trying to say here is the ground lease rent, which comes to $6,366 a month up to October 2021. That's next year. After that, the lease price grows by 10% every 5 years over the 50-year lease. Now, Lester said 15-year lease.
Sounds like a great deal, sir.
Yeah, it sure does. I wonder if the lessor threw in the Brooklyn Bridge as kind of a come-on, as a sweetener to the deal, you know. I'll also give you a quit-claim bridge to this bridge that connects Brooklyn and Manhattan. The tolls on that bridge are worth a fortune. The purchase agreement lists the buyer as the government of Guam, Director of Administration Edward Burns signed for Gov Guam as the buyer signatory. In addition for paying for the leasehold, Gov Guam plans to spend an extra $1 million up front to renovate the old Guam Legislature building. It acquired the leasehold with the building in its current degraded or, quote, as is condition. Gov Guam also agreed to make a non-refundable $350,000 down payment for the landlord to begin making renovations. Now, of course, they made a $350,000 down payment. And what about all this talk about deficit reduction and all of these other? Where did the $350,000? That's what Lester Carlson should have been talking about. Is there an appropriation for this? How does this fit in with the deficit reduction? Where did the money come from? So the renovation includes painting, replacing 75% of the carpeting, stripping and polishing the vinyl flooring, and treating or replacing termite-infested wood. The $2.5 million Gov Guam is spending comes from a U.S. Department of Interior grant. So it's okay. It's a grant, so we can piss it away. It's all right. The grant awarded during the previous administration was meant to fund homeless shelters, etc. The Leon Guerrero Tenori administration, though, decided to nix the Hagatna homeless shelter and instead use the building and the $2.5 million grant to consolidate in one location Veterans Affairs, DISID, Developmental Disabilities Council, the Hagatna Restoration and Development Authority. There's the HRRA. There's a name that keeps popping up. The intent of bringing together these specific offices, as noted by the administration, is to house Government of Guam services for Guam's physically challenged population. According to a 2019 letter from Lieutenant Governor Josh Tenorio to Interior. Last week it was mentioned that the newly impaneled Ethics Commission would also have an office at the old legislature building. Why do they need an office? They're not doing anything. I guess they needed a place to, to install their coffee maker and hang out and read magazines or something, because they haven't done anything since they were impaneled. Okay, Taiwan-based owners. Gov Guam bought the leasehold from Tai Hung Corporation Guam. The company is owned by Por Fong Lin, a Taiwanese citizen who is the company's secretary and treasurer, owns a third of the shares. Por Shi Lin, a Taiwan, Por Shi Lin, shouldn't that be Por They Lin? Real Joe Cruz?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. It shows here that this one of the owners is named Por Shi Lin. And I'm saying, shouldn't it be Por They Lin?
Yes, sir. It should be For them Lin.
Yeah. I think it's the same in Chinese, right?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. She's a Taiwanese citizen. She's the company president, as a 1/3 shareholder. And Por Chain Lin, a U.S. citizen, is the company's vice president, who holds 316 shares. All three owners of Tai Hung share the same address in the Glass Company building on Nanjing Road, Taipei. Department of Rev Tax records show. For this year alone, the annual cost of the ground lease alone will be $76,392. With the first 10% increase for 5 years, the annual cost will exceed $80,000. According to the purchase agreement, renovations to the 22,325 square foot building include removal and replacement of all termite-infested cove bays, treatment of the building's interior for wood infestation, et cetera, et cetera. And that's enough on this. I'm still working on some other angles, so this is probably going to be on the card for tomorrow. We're getting here to the seventh inning stretch. We'll come back from the seventh inning stretch with Moylan versus Barnes.
The Extra Point with Jerry Roberts of Guam Training.
It's one of the most valuable questions we can ever ask ourselves in our career and the rest of life, too. But our ego rarely allows us to do it. I'm Jerry Roberts, and at 7:20 a.m. on The Ray Gibson Show, we'll ask that question and see how you feel about it.
You can find daily transcripts of The Extra Point at GuamTraining.com. Tune in every weekday morning at 7:20 for The Extra Point with Jerry Roberts. Brought to you by Guahan Insurance Services and First Hawaiian Bank on 93.3 The Point.
Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie is brought to you by Mezcla. Mezcla restaurant in Agana is closed for improvements and will reopen on February 2nd. You can still get all your favorites at Mezcla Bistro in Tumon on the first floor of the Grand Plaza Hotel. Favorites like SD-style fish tacos, beer battered, tender fish fillet stuffed in corn tortillas and topped with cilantro lime sour cream sauce, shredded cabbage, and salsa fresca, served with a spicy roasted chili salsa for only $12.95. Try it today. Available at Tumon at the Grand Plaza Hotel. For reservations, please call 969-2652.
So here we are, seventh inning stretch, center field bleachers, Wrigley Field, Chicago. We have 2 more innings to go on today's exciting episode of Tall Tales. Next item on the card, Moylan versus Barnes. And in Sunday's paper, there was an op-ed from Jim Moylan dispelling the myths of a part-time legislature. Now, politically, I don't know if this is a good idea or not, because, one of the rules is if you are going to rebut your opponent's position, don't restate his position and then rebut it. Because in a sense, what you're inadvertently doing is you are giving more weight to your opponent's position than what it deserves. Better just to come out and with your statement that would rebut it without restating it. Anyhow, that's not what Jim Moylan did, but he's the senator, and it's his bill, so I'll make the most of it. I'm 100, as you were, I think I told Ray, I'm 1,000% in favor of Jim Moylan's bill. And I worry a little bit that people who can understand the wisdom of Jim's bill and the concept are distracted by shiny objects like, well, yeah, I like a part-time, but I want 21 senators. Well, let's get a part-time legislature with 15 senators, and if the 21 is a good idea, you'll have a pretty good chance of getting them to move in that direction. I hear that, and I hear Ken. I had to talk to Ken about let's not be talking about an initiative, because that just gives the politicians cover. That gives people like Will Castro, who once upon a time was a Republican, who is now what I would refer to as a political chameleon. If you saw him in the pictures over at the Lou Leon Guerrero Public Relations Extravaganza at the Hakabotan, he fit right into the background. Talk about protective coloration.
He's like that dude in the background of The Last Supper.
Yeah. So protective coloration, you know, if you're a Republican, yeah, I wear a red shirt here every once in a while. 'Cause I'm a Republican. If I were going to go to a partisan event, I'd want to wear my red shirt. So I would expect Will Castro to wear a red shirt. But when I saw him in those pictures over at the Hackabotan extravaganza, he was wearing blue. Well, maybe he wasn't, but his protective coloration made him fit right in there with the Democrats. So, cover. So Will Castro, when asked, are you in favor of a part-time legislature, came right back instantly and said, I think it's a good idea, and I think we should let the people decide. Let's put it out for a referendum. Meaning, hell no, I don't want it. But I'm politically astute enough not to publicly oppose it, so I'm going to take what I think is a safe way out and say, let's have a referendum. So let's not have a referendum. Let's all get behind Jim Moylan's bill. Let's not have a long-range plan. Let's do it now. Let's get behind Jim Moylan's bill, and either it passes or it becomes the wedge issue in the election that's coming up in November, so that people could lose their seats just like they lost their seats because of their participation in the 2014 salary smash and grab. So Jim's op-ed raises a few of the myths and then demythicizes the whole process. And he says a part-time legislature would remove the people's access to their senators. Now, I suppose implied within that is all you have to do is go down to the legislature building and just find, or any one of the offices scattered around the islands in luxurious locations, and just walk in the door and your senator is going to welcome you with open arms. Well, think again. Or you're going to call the legislature and say, I want to talk with Senator Smucker-Huckowitz. I'll tell you what's going to happen 9% of the time. Oh, Senator Smucker-Huckowitz is not available right now. Would you like to talk with their chief of staff? No, I don't want to talk with their chief of staff. I didn't vote for any chief of staff. I voted for Smucker-Huckowitz. Oh, well, give me your name and number, and I'll have the senator return your call. Parenthesis, on the 12th of never. So if you think that there'd be less accessibility, I don't know. Jim says the reality is that it is a senator and not the model of the legislature which determines how accessible one wants to be. One too many times I have been informed by constituents that they face challenges attaining schedules with certain colleagues, and this is not a unique situation to just the 35th Guam legislature. Could I have your permission to be a little self-laudatory, Real Joe Cruz?
Yes, sir.
Back during the 27th and 28th, there was a senator who answered the phone himself.
Really?
Yeah. You didn't have to go through the call screening process. Office of Senator X. Hi, I'd like to speak with Senator X. May I know who's calling? This is Smucker-Huckowitz. Oh, one moment, please. I'm sorry, Senator Smucker-Huckowitz is not available. If my name, excuse me, I'm sorry, sir, Senator X is not available. Question, ma'am, if my name were not Smucker-Huckowitz, would he be available? In other words, they find out who you are and then will tell you whether the senator's available or not. It's kind of a worthiness test. Oh, we didn't do that. You know, that senator just picked up the phone and said, hello, Bob's office. This is Bob.
That's hilarious, sir.
It is.
You probably shocked some people.
And a lot of people. Is this a senator? Oh, my heart. Yeah. And if for some reason I weren't at my desk, the person who answered the phone would say, there was no call screening. It wouldn't put you through the third degree. And would say, the senator is at the legislature of public hearing. I expect him back in a couple hours. I'll ask him to call you then, or would you like to call back? None of this, oh, he's not available. He's out to lunch on a permanent banquet circuit. So I go along exactly with what Jim says. I notice you've opened the Another Joe line again.
Sir. Yes.
All right, Joe. Joe is really, I wonder if Joe gets altitude sickness from riding that Ferris wheel so often. Good afternoon, Another Joe.
Yeah, sometimes I get vertigo, but as long as the ride is not pulling too many G's, I'm okay. Thanks for asking.
All right.
So, I think, Kababa, we found out what happened. Did you say 20 million at some point?
20?
For the building? Or 2 million?
2.5.
2.5?
Yeah.
Oh, well, I think we have an idea of where some of that surplus went, possibly 2 million of it, and also the money that was supposed to be set aside for a homeless shelter and a help center. The reason being that it was not feasible, it was not enough to get it going, the project. I think word of mouth was that they might have needed at least 2 or 3 times as much, so around 5-6 million. So what do you do when you have 2 million that you don't have to return, right?
Yeah.
But it's a point of curiosity. You did say that, I think you said in the earlier a program on a different day, they're going to move DISID and which other offices there?
Yeah, DISID, Veterans Affairs, Ethics Commission, Developmental Disabilities Council.
Wow. So they're really getting so they're going to get some traction because they're going to be paying attention to the handicapped, veterans, and ethics. Well, that's going to be kind of interesting if to determine whether this is ethical. I mean, there's any ethical questions, but
well, if there are any ethical questions, we'll never find out from the Ethics Commission because they haven't done anything.
But they're going to be relocating to that building, right?
Yeah, and I opined a little earlier, they probably need a place to plug in their coffee pot, and then somebody will bring in a refrigerator so they can store their snacks there, you know.
It's not going to be hard finding them because we know where they're going to be. But it's like, again, it's kind of curious. A 50-year lease. Why they couldn't just buy the building outright? I'm sorry, the land and the building.
Why didn't they buy the land? Did they go through the procurement process? Did they look around for other sites? Was this the best deal we could have got? I keep coming back to the same question. It's my suspicious mind. Who are we trying to do a favor for? That's what the whole thing looks like.
Someone might have thought it was convenient or easy, the easy road, because there's familiarity. But you know, like you said, the process, right? There's a protocol or process. But the other thing I wanted to ask was, trying to keep my train of thought here. The money that the 2 million that was supposed to be for a homeless shelter and a homeless help center, that was I think Bill 18-35. This is the Springfield Legislature, right?
Okay.
So that's more than this bill. So I wonder if he has anything to say, any opinions of, you know, are they going to help the homeless somehow with is it because a lot of the homeless are handicapped, or, you know, with DISID, they're working with DISID. That I wonder if Moylan is concerned about that because it was his bill, and or are we just going to turn, you know, and for that matter, the feds, are the feds concerned whether or not it's going to be used for the homeless, or is it just compact impact? Or I don't understand.
Feds gave their permission to use it for this use, but the other thing is this, Another Joe. All of those agencies that are moving in there already have offices. They're not in tents out in the Paseo. The only one that doesn't have an office is the Ethics Commission, and given by their, their activities, they could be in a tent out in the Paseo, and it wouldn't make any difference.
Yeah. So the thing with Castro, what's that saying? The enemy of my enemy is my friend.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm wondering if Castro is picking up on the tension between Leon Guerrero and San Nicolas, and thinking, wow, this is an opportunity for him to get funded by someone of a huge war chest like Leon Guerrero. It's better that she's on his side than not, and there won't be an opposition from the Calvos or the Republican Party if he runs as a Republican.
It's very possible. All he needs is a jacket that is blue and red stripes.
There you go, Gabab.
So he can fly the right colors.
Or he needs to put up one of those, they have one of those caricatures of a mix between a donkey and an elephant. I don't know what you call that.
Yeah, he could. But, that could be the emblem on the chest of that striped jacket.
Unless he's going to go the route of independent and get the endorsement from Leon Guerrero and the Calvo. But anyway, I'm just saying that we don't know what's on the man's mind, but it would seem as though it's opportunity. When they say opportunity knocks, right? Who's going to answer the door? Okay, Bob. Thanks for your time.
Okay, another Joe. It's always a pleasure. Always a pleasure to talk to any one of the Joes on the phone, right, Real Joe Cruz?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Okay, so Moylan then is talking about access to senators, which brings me up to the lack of access of a senator here just very recently. You'll recall that a week ago, Friday, there was a clamor for a special session of the legislature to deal with a recall bill for Jesse Blas, the jailed mayor of Jonia. And Tolina Nelson petitioned the speaker, Tina Rose Munoz Barnes, to call special session. Tina said, I can't do it. First of all, it's not an emergency. Second, I'm going off island. I won't even be here. So I sent a Freedom of Information Act request to Speaker Tina Rose Munoz Barnes, and I asked her the following question. I'm reading a letter dated today. Hafade, thank you for your interest in our government. I am in receipt of your request dated January 16 relating to public records reflecting my order to legislative employees requiring my salary to be reduced for the day I was off island attending a family funeral. In other words, I sent her a FOIA the day that I read that she was taken off island, and I said, please send me all public records showing that you have instructed people at the legislature, meaning the payroll folks, to dock your salary for the one day that you weren't there. That's what I asked for. And this is her answer. She says, senatorial salaries are set by statute, 2 GCA 1106.1. And then it says senators are to receive a salary of $55,303, and the speaker of the salary is to be $60,850. Such compensation shall be paid out of funds to be appropriated to the legislature. That's a quote from statute. Of course, I knew that already, right? And it only got reduced to that after Frank Ogden very heroically rescued us from the Smath and Graham of November 21, 2014. Then Tina goes on to say, leave policies such as annual and sick leave do not apply to members of the legislature. 4 GCA section 4109, parenthesis, excluding elected officials from qualifying as employees occupying permanent positions who are entitled to annual leave. See also 4 GCA 4108, excluding members of the legislature from being eligible for sick leave. So no, senators don't get sick leave. They don't get annual leave. And they shouldn't. Because we know what happens. What happened was, I'll take this down into the home stretch.
People come to Chili's for a million reasons. For happy hour, date night, birthdays, or just because it's Tuesday. But if you ask us what brings people into our restaurants time and time again is that Chili's moment. You know the one. When you eat so much you want to fall asleep at the table, or when you meet up with good friends and it turns into a party. At Chili's, moments like these matter, and we want to make more of them. So there may be a million reasons to Chili's, but all you really need is one. Chili's, savor the moment in our new location in the Tumon Sands Plaza, second floor.
Talk Tales with Bob Klitzkie is brought to you by Bank Pacific, banking on the Pacific for 65 years.
Okay, so once again, I asked Tina, did you send letters to the paymaster there at the legislature saying, dock me for the day that I wasn't available to act as speaker? And then she goes on to say, leave policies such as annual leave, sick leave do not apply to members of the legislature. That's very true. That being said, no such records pertaining to your request exist, and that's not what I asked. As public servants, our jobs entail us to be ready to serve our constituents 24/7. Well, why didn't you on the day that you went off island then? And then here's the capper. I chose this job. It's a job, right? I chose this job to follow my passion and serve our people of Guam. I am honored and humbled to be given this opportunity. So that's why she chose that job. So when I got that, I wrote back. And this is what I said in my response. Dear Speaker Burns, per your response, I conclude that you will be paid for the day you were unable to function as Speaker, January 17, because you were off island. What else could I conclude? She's the Speaker. Legislature was in session. She was sitting up there in the dais with a gavel in her hand, ruling. No, she wasn't there. She wasn't even on island. So a part-time legislature would remove people's access to their senators. So you had access to Tina a week ago Friday. All you had to do was go to Saipan and be lucky, and you might find her. All right, here comes, hey, Jack.
Hey, good afternoon, Bob. How you doing?
Sir.
Well, I was just curious about price gouging.
Did Tina engage in price gouging?
Well, no. The coronavirus is going around, and so there's like an uptick on buying the N95 respirator or a mask to protect and to send to relatives and things like that.
Yeah.
And so I was wondering, I know we have a price gouging law when there's an emergency, but we discussed about the Guam's comprehensive emergency plan.
Yeah.
Yeah. I was wondering, at what point does price gouging take into effect?
Well, first of all, I'll give you my preference, and then I will try to answer the question in its own terms. Okay, Jack?
Okay.
My own preference is never. I don't want any price gouging laws, because you start out and look at it from the standpoint of the market. What do you suppose the market for an N95 mask was a year ago today?
Well, I know last month it was like
a year ago today. You know, probably if you're in the mask, I don't even know who sells them. But
well, Home Depot sells them. But you know, they sell them in pharmacies too.
Yeah,
And,
well, let's say a year ago today, maybe a merchant might sell a dozen N95 masks in a month.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so the inventory that the merchant keeps is going to be based on a dozen masks a month, right? So maybe he figures, given the vicissitudes of shipping, etc., maybe he ought to have a 3-month supply of N95 masks in stock. So the highest number of masks he'd ever have would be 3 times 12. I think that's 36, right, real Joe Cruz? Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Joe Cruz is the polymath on the staff here.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah. So then all of a sudden, something like this comes along and all 36 of them are gone in one day. Well, let's say all 35 of them are gone in one day. Now, the merchant reads the paper like everybody else, and if he's a smart merchant, he even listens to Tall Tales. If he's a super smart merchant, he sponsors Tall Tales. So he knows what's going on, and he knows there's going to be one hell of a demand for N95 masks. So I got to get some, and I got to get them out here quick. I'm going to pay the extra I'm going to pay for air freight, and I'm going to do, there's no market here to guide me, so I'm going to have to guess how many I need to bring out here. So I'm going to bring 1,000. And if I'm right, I can make some money. If I'm wrong, I'll have enough N95 masks to last me for the rest of my life, and I'm only 25. So what premium does the merchant have to extract from those transactions to make it all worthwhile? If there's a law that says you can't raise your price, he's going to say, screw it, I'm not going to bring any more of those masks out here. And it's a little more complicated, but the same goes for everything that is so-called protected post-typhoon. Typhoons are a little different because you know typhoons are going to occur, and your inventory is a little bit more predictable. You say, well, in order to handle the next typhoon, I've got to have an inventory of 150 items. So I'll always have 150 items in my inventory, even though it costs me money to have them in my inventory and not sell them. And then when the typhoon hits, he's going to have to raise his prices to restock his inventory. The only thing you get with these so-called price gouging laws is more scarcity. So I don't want to see them. And I will criticize. If I ever have a chance to testify in a bill, I'll go down there with both my mouths blazing, Jack.
Okay. And so what was your take when we were hit by the typhoon and all the gas companies were prohibited from selling gas to the public, and only government employees and emergency vehicles were allowed to get their gas?
Well, that's the key word here is scarcity, and that's what economics is all about. So scarcity is what economics is built upon, and if there isn't enough to go around, then a government will come along and say, this is what we're going to allow. I could see fire trucks and ambulances having access to gasoline, even if I couldn't put any gasoline in my 28-year-old Rocky.
Well, I don't know. I think really, like you said, business is a risk, and so business is independent on whether what government does or government doesn't do. I mean, you're making a risk there if you're taking in those masks and they decided they're not flying off the shelf. But we've always had a poor problem with logistics here in Guam.
Hey, Jack.
And it doesn't matter whether it comes to bottled water.
Hey, Jack.
Or,
I'm running up against the finish line here, so
all
maybe.
right, Bob. So yeah, I can call back tomorrow.
Thanks a lot, Jack. Good talking to you.
Have a good day.
Okay, so tune in tomorrow at the end of the program. You might find somebody calling and telling me I don't know jack about prices.
The Point is KUSG, Hagåtña, Guam, 93.3 FM and 104.3 HD3. HD3.